Hello and welcome to another episode of Slice of Community. I'm your host, Jerome Moore, and today we're live in studio, joined by the audience with Tennessee State Senator Mark Pody and Tennessee State Representative Caleb Hemmer. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. What an audience.
Yeah.
I was impressed.
Yeah, that's all those hand claps were for you, you know? And Happy New Year. This is the first show of the new year, so I'm excited to have y'all. You know, and y'all have a more exciting New Year happening next week, you know, when y'all go into session.
Tuesday and noon.
Hopefully not too exciting.
No, well, it seems to always be exciting, you know? But I want to dive right into this conversation and talk about really the bipartisan work that is happening across Tennessee, but more in particular, the Davidson County delegation. Could you, I'm gonna start with you, Representative Hemmer, could you break that down? Like, what is that delegation for those who might not know it even exists and that is, you know, something that is happening?
Yeah, thank you, Jerome, for having us here. And Davidson County is represented by both Republicans and Senator Pody and Democrats. There's 13 individuals, 4 in the Senate, the rest in the House. And we are the state legislators for Davidson County. And so as part of a delegation, we meet regularly, work with the mayor's office to ensure that Davidson County interests are supported at the state level.
Yeah. So that infrastructure you all are talking about, education, healthcare, infrastructure, transit, all of those things. Interesting, how does that bipartisan kind of mesh provide opportunities for Davidson County when you have different perspectives from both party sides? And I'll get that to you, Senator Pody.
So, you know, in government, there's different layers of government. We can say you got the school board, then you got your city, county, then you got the state, and you got the federal. So depending on what layer of government you're working at, it's important for each layer of government to work with all the layers of government. And then in Davidson County, we want to, you know, I am the Republican on the delegation, and it's important that we all work together for the betterment of the community. I will tell you that in a football game, you know, the most exciting things is always like the last 2 minutes before the half, the last 2 minutes of the game. But a lot of the other things is like mundane. Same thing in the legislature, you know, especially you'll look at the last 2 minutes, we might say, of controversial issues. And that gets all the press or the news. But for the most part, we work really well together. And there's a lot of votes that we go through where it's unanimous. It's 100% everybody voting the same way. Yes, yes.
With Democrats and Republicans in Tennessee? No way.
And so we're not like Washington, D.C. here in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a really, really good working relationship. A good example is we'll be meeting as a delegation this Friday. We'll be meeting with the mayor and kind of seeing and laying out what's important to Davidson County in the upcoming legislation.
And speaking on what's important to Davidson County, you know, Nashville being the capital of Tennessee, but also we're surrounded by many other counties and some that, you know, it's in your District 17. How does that play a part in when we're thinking about making decisions that will, you know, are for Davidson County residents, but, you know, might affect those who either live, you know, maybe in Lebanon or Wilson County, but, you know, work in Davidson County? How does that play a part of decision making or just a perspectives of going into those conversations? I'll start with you on that, Representative Hemmer.
Yeah, thank you. It plays a lot. I mean, one thing I like to say is at least Davidson County, the region, is kind of the golden goose of the economic tax base of the state. You know, I think we have over 50% of the GDP is just in Davidson County and those surrounding counties. So things like the roads and the infrastructure and making sure that Nashville is very, you know, the vitality that we need it to be for our state to be successful. I joke to a lot of tourists that come in, every time you buy a beer on Broadway, you're paying for a teacher's salary in rural Benton County or one of these other rural areas. So it really is all interconnected. And so, you know, we have 99 members of the House, 33 in the Senate. We're each there to represent our specific, you know, regionalities and localities. And so, but at the end of the day, we all have to work together to pass a balanced budget that meets the needs of the whole state.
I'm curious, what happens, you know, we have session that's coming up, and what happens when it comes to, there are statewide implications, but maybe Davidson County wants something different. How are those decisions kind of walked through, maybe get contentious, or what does that process look like, and how do you know, you all come to a resolution in those kind of cases? You all both might have different, perspectives on that, but I'm curious to hear from you.
So it wouldn't be just Davidson County, because if we look at Shelby County, it's a lot of the same time. So sometimes Shelby County might want something unique from what the state is, or Davidson County might want something. It's not often that some of the rural counties would need something like that. It does happen from time to time. For the most part, both Shelby County and Davidson County could almost like be sister counties in what they're looking at. And it's important when we do something on a statewide level that we don't pass a bill that's specifically for one county. It should be for the entire state to go through. Now, we do see some bills that come in that'll be kind of based on population, and it's actually technically just trying to isolate one specific county. Now, whether that's constitutional or not, it's another question. But we see some of those coming forward. In Davidson County, though, in the Senate, this might be a little bit different in the House. There's kind of a Senate rule that says if you're in Shelby County or in Davidson County, if there's any senator that doesn't agree with what that piece of legislation is, they almost have a veto power over that we got to all be in agreement on the Republican side to say that that's going to go through, which means that I'm trying to work a lot with the Davidson County delegation. For example, I'll meet with the mayor from time to time, and he and I might be politically opposite on something, but the goal is how can we find common ground to help everybody in the district.
All right.
Yeah, and that it's, just every kind of interest group in the world comes to the legislature, and counties, cities. A lot of times the House is much different than the Senate, and but our job is, at the end of the day, is really to try to find consensus, find ways we can work together to try to be do what we can to be the best interest of all Tennesseans.
If you live in the state of Tennessee, or just look at media, one would think and say that, hey, the Tennessee Democrats and Republicans just, don't do this, right? They can never find a common ground, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about some of these issues or policies where you all have found common ground, but maybe it didn't make the headlines, right? Maybe it wasn't those, big captions that drew the end of the entertainment. Because I think that's important for Tennesseans to know that, like, hey, no, you have two parties, they also do come together. They do sit in some of the same delegations and have to find a common ground for the better good of all Tennesseans.
Sure, so I can tell you one specific piece of legislation that came through that it was very important to Davidson County, and it would be the East Bank bill. Okay. And this just happened a couple years ago, and when it first came, and I looked at it, and I actually met with some of the people in the Davidson County delegation that on the Democrats. I said, I'm not for this. I'm actually opposed to it. And I sat down with the mayor as well and said, I'm not comfortable with this piece of legislation. I'm not going to support it. And by the time we were done from when it was introduced to January till it was over, I was able to actually help co-sponsor the piece of legislation. And it was just everybody finding ways that we could work together. That was actually a really important piece of legislation to move Davidson County forward. It's going to have a huge, huge economic impact on this community as well as the surrounding communities. It's going to be great for tourists. It's going to be great for the people that live here. There's going to be affordable housing. There's going to be a lot of things that are put there. But it's a fact that we were able to sit down and not have lines drawn in the sand and say we're not going to hear each other. I think that they got to hear what we were concerned on, and we got to hear what they were concerned on. In the middle is where we met. We both made compromises to say we can live with this piece of legislation going forward. And I think that's a great example of how it helped Davidson County by us working together.
Yeah, anything to add to that, Representative?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I mean, Mark did a great job of helping steward that, and being the lone member of Republican member of our delegation with Republican supermajority controlled. We really lean on him a lot to help shepherd some of those things through. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the East Bank is the largest, essentially, urban infrastructure project in the country. Yeah. And it is, you don't see it there right now because it's
you see it, but you don't see,
and a lot of things.
What it's gonna look like.
Yeah, the things like, recently we just had the TPAC announcement. TPAC's moving over there. The Oracle's spending billions and billions of dollars to create a worldwide headquarters there. The jobs, infrastructure, everything that's going into there, it's going to be really transformational. We're really embarrassed by riches here in Nashville in a lot of ways. I was talking to a friend from Nashville, from Knoxville the other day, and it was telling me they haven't had a new tower built in Knoxville in a generation. I mean, think about that. We have more cranes in downtown Nashville than I think any other place in the United States. A lot of times. And so finding ways like that to work across the aisle to do what we need to do in the best interest of Nashvillians and by and large, and Tennesseans is really what our constituents expect of us at the end of the day.
Right. We do have a live audience here, and so many of them are probably wondering, well, with this delegation, me living in Davidson County, what role can I play, right? What role can I play in when you all go into this delegation? My voice can be heard, or my concerns can be heard. What are some of the ways that you all, make sure community members can be involved before you all come into that delegation, whether it's in you all separate districts or, boots on the ground work or whatever that may look like? Because we all know community voice is important because you all represent our communities. And we can start with you on Senator
Sure.
Pody.
So something that I've done since I've been elected is every single Thursday, I meet with a group of individuals, and they are across party lines. So I got Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and on Thursday, we literally read the bills that we have coming up for the next week, whether they're being committee or going to be voting on the floor. And we go around the room, and we're here to say, hey, I'm a retired person, and they tell me this is how that bill might be affecting me. Or they'll say, I'm an attorney, this is how it affects me, or a realtor, or whatever. So we got a lot of diverse people that sit at that table. Right. It's not just what I think, it's what the community thinks. And if I can have a diverse group of individuals sitting at that table to say, this is how it affects me, my family, my business, right, it guides me to how I should vote on something like that. So if there's somebody in the community that says, hey, I would like to get involved in something like that, I'm always open. Yeah. I also have town hall meetings, and the first Friday of every month, I'm always available, and I sit and people come in, they talk to me, they tell me, hey, this is a concern that I do have or I don't have. Now, and I'm also fortunate, I ride the train, and we got a lot of state employees, an example, there's different people. And so when I'm on the train, and that comes from Lebanon into Nashville, yeah, and I try and ride that once a week, I'm hearing a lot of people that saying, hey, this is what's going on, this is how it affects me, and such. So I try and reach out and listen to the community wherever I can. That's on mine, but I know you're very much active in the community as well.
Yeah, I think being here in Nashville, it's interesting, and it's better than a lot of other legislators that are across the state and don't really it's kids just can't just come down to the Capitol and right, knock on doors and do that. And so we are fortunate in that way. And I try to be very active in our community. Mm-hmm. I do a constituent survey right before session to make sure I know what people are actually caring about, what they want. We get a lot of emails throughout the year, particularly a lot more during session when things ramp up and you start seeing the headlines.
Amazing emails, I'm sure. You're doing an excellent job. I'm pretty sure they all say that.
And one thing I like to do as well is really do a big social media presence, but also a newsletter. I put out a monthly newsletter letting people know what I'm up to, what I'm hearing, what I'm doing, as well as just having town halls as well. Try to do a couple of those a year.
With Nashville and Davidson County, seems like it's changing every day, right? Influx of just people coming from all over the country. You get into infrastructure, right? You get into transit, right? You get into affordability. When it comes to those things, especially surrounding Davidson County, that eventually affects these other counties as well. What are the decisions being made or talked about currently around those things that are affecting, pretty much probably everybody in some type of way, form, or fashion, whether you're on the outside or inside of Davidson County? And it might be something coming up in session if you all would like to share, but I'm just curious because that's something that's very current, very present, and you're affected by it every day in some type of way, form, or fashion. And I can start with you on that.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is, from transportation policy, we really work at a regional level, and so there's an entity called the Greater Nashville Regional GNRC, and they meet with all the county mayors, the city mayors around these areas, and they're putting together a lot of transportation plans that make sense. And so when I'm going to, for example, a state route that I was looking to help, increase from 2 to 4 lanes, first person I actually talk to is not so much TDOT or NDOT, but I'll go to it's called the planning office within that and say, here's what we're trying to do. Let's talk to the mayors. Let's try to get that in this next transportation funding rounds or planning rounds, so then it could be put in our state budgets and state recommendations. So that's a good example of regionalism working in a cohesive way that really helps make sense for everybody involved.
I got something special for you.
All right.
Right? Real life scenario, especially affecting Davidson County. At the state level, You have something like a tunnel being built that's going to be from, roughly downtown into our airport, right? That didn't need to really involve anybody in Davidson County because it was being constructed on state land, right? When things like that come across you all's desk of the delegation, when it kind of takes out community from it, right? How does that play into y'all's role as senator or state representative in communicating that to residents, especially the residents that may be affected by some type of infrastructure like that?
Right. And that's a huge, huge project. And when that announcement came, we had kind of heard rumors of some of these things being discussed, but when the announcement came, it actually came at the airport, and I represent the airport. And I wasn't even at the airport when that announcement came. And I had a high anxiety of how it was done and what happened. I didn't have any assurance of what was going to happen for environment, for the studies, for what permits would or wouldn't be required, the safety concerns, and I had a lot of concerns with that. I met with the governor's staff. I literally met with Commissioner TDOT. I met with ECD. I met with TDEC, the environment, and I wanted to go through every single channel that I could to investigate what this was. After I had that as a background, I called them, and I called the boring company, and they sent their executive down, and I had multiple meetings with them. And I told them to start with, I said I was not thrilled with how this came out and so forth. However, after multiple meetings, after walking through, and I've actually had somebody go out to Vegas and ride this and check it out. I've become very comfortable with what this could be. They told me originally, they said as well, we were very poor in the decision how it came out and how we didn't get the community involved to start with. So they're very open to say, we kind of maybe missed the ball on that. But the fact is, we're going to be taking thousands of cars off of our streets, and it's going to be done without taxpayer money. And it's going to start with going from the airport to the convention center, and it's going to be going down Murfreesboro Road. They can do this at about 1 mile per month. And if we were to do this, and I'm vice chairman of the transportation in the Senate, if we were to do something like this to change how we can change our infrastructure,
Transit,
it would take us 10 years if we fast-tracked it and over $1 billion.
We don't have that? We don't have $1 billion?
But we don't have that laying around right now. But the fact that we can have a private company coming in to do it. We're also being assured that we're not trying to bypass any permits. So TDOT's not going to say that we're not going to bypass any of the permits they had to do. TDEC is going to say we're holding them to the same standard, that they have to do these permits. We've even talked to the engineering to why they chose the 30 feet, what this looks like, what does it happen if there's a fire, what does it happen if somebody's having a heart attack down there, what happens if a car is on fire. And so we've tried to go through all those scenarios as well before I felt comfortable saying that this is going to be a project that's going to help Davidson County.
And I think all Davidson County residents going to be happy if it's going to alleviate some traffic. It's like, oh, I just thought maybe I should at least have a voice in it. And I think another thing around MMPS, right? We come with funding. I know that's something you all talk about too, part of the delegation, is when we talk about vouchers, right? And it's not a Davidson County thing; it's a state thing. But when a particular county that you're a part of a delegation maybe have a different view or perspective about it, how does that, what are those talks like? And since you're right here in Davidson County, I'm pretty sure you heard the talks loud when it came to something like the vouchers. But when those things come up, and you have one county or counties, it's like, I don't know how this may affect our public school system, but it's like, hey, this is a state thing.
Yeah, it's no easy answer. I'll start with at least the tunnel project first. I mean, I think that was an example of what not to do in terms of community engagement. I mean, as you mentioned, we're both legislators in this county didn't even knew about the announcement until it happened.
We all just knew y'all knew.
Senator, no,
we all knew. We just knew that y'all was in on it.
He, like I said, he represents the district where they had the announcement. He didn't even get an invite, so it was very hush hush. But that's just an example again of what not to do. I think the Silicon Valley technology model of break things and work fast and ask clean up later does not work well in government. It does not work well with interacting with the public. And so really, shared the same concerns he did and had a lot of the same meetings. But, at the end of the day, our job, right now is to make sure that's done as appropriately, within the confines of the existing, laws and regulations as possible and provide as much, guidance and oversight of that as we can. And then the second part of your question, a lot of times, as we mentioned, there's not a straight Democrat or Republican view when it comes to education or some other things. We have our partisan fights, and it creates plenty of headlines. And
Not tonight though. Not
tonight.
tonight.
Not tonight. Yeah, we broke.
Unless you want to come off the ropes on them, Senator Pody, I wouldn't mind. I would love to see that. Actually.
His wife is here, my mom's here, so we're on.
Even better. Get them all. Get us a family.
Yeah. So but we really we meet a lot with each other. We meet a lot with the mayor's office and our multiple constituencies, and really, at the end of the day, I think a lot of legislators are really just trying to figure out, how is this affecting their constituents, how is it affecting their communities, getting as much feedback as possible. We are not experts on everything, but yet we have to become experts on everything that we vote on, and in very quick fashion. A lot of times, things happen very quickly with amendments flying around and changes, and so we're constantly drinking out of a fire hose, trying to get that advice. We both, as he mentioned, he talks to people on a weekly meeting. We both, as well as most legislators I know, are interacting with a lot of people to try to get that expert advice and make the best decisions as possible.
With the session coming up, if you all can give us some insights on possibly what maybe should community be looking out for as far as topics, issues that may be coming across during this session. Some of them may be, hidden gems that, that may not make the big headlines, but just give us a little bit insight, while we have you all here, that, some of the issues that may be opportunities for more bipartisan work to happen throughout Tennessee to make, just not Davidson County, but all counties stronger, healthier, and just better overall.
All right, so from my viewpoint, I think that we have a very serious problem with prisons and how we try and rehabilitate or not rehabilitate people when they're in prison. I am not saying that I want to be soft on crime. If somebody's done a violent crime, I want them to stay in prison until their sentence is done. But most people are coming out of prison. And if you're in prison, you still need to be treated with dignity, and you need to be safe. You don't need to be beat up by gangs. You don't need to be extorted. And I've gotten many, many calls from families that are extorted and things that are happening to the prisoners. This isn't a fancy issue. It's not a sexy, big headline type thing. But I am very serious about finding ways that we can make sure that we have education opportunities for those people that are in prison. And while they are in prison, that they are going to be treated humanely and safe. I don't like the fact that some of the ways that we're having oversight is happening. I've been very clear to the commissioner that it is not right that if I am the commissioner, I hire my own staff to overlook what I'm doing. I think that needs to be done differently. We actually had an oversight board a few years ago, and that was done away with. So about 10 years ago, we did away with that board. I think that we were probably too hasty in doing that. I think that we need to look at Tennessee and how we're operating our prisons and see what we could do a little bit better on that.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for some, criminal legal reform, prison correctional reform. Okay.
I think there's no shortage of problems for us to work on up at the Capitol. I think one of the main themes you're going to hear this year is about the state budget and the various impacts that are happening because of the federal cuts, because of federal tariffs, et cetera. The station alone, as you heard, has lost over $1 million just due to federal cuts. And so we have hundreds, thousands probably of organizations that are very, well-intentioned, do great work, nonprofits in the community, et cetera, and they've lost significant or at risk of losing significant funds. A lot of them are coming to the state right now to try to be held whole, or at least to try to stop the bleeding. So that's already creating a lot of pressure on a budget where we just got some reports from the UT Boyd Center of Economic Research last week that shows that we're having some cracks in our economy in the state. And so we're seeing a budget that's going to be probably flat, very minor growth, as well as having a lot of cuts that are happening from the federal that's affects 30+% of our budget. And if you look every year, the last few years, that trend has gone way down, and so it's creating a new dynamic that we haven't been used to. We've had roughly 10, 15 years of very good budget years where we've had surplus. It's easy to manage a budget when you're getting more money in. It's a lot harder. When I first started working with the state, we were having 5-10% cuts every year, and it was troubling. A lot of the legislators that we're serving right now, they've never had to deal with that. So I think it's going to be a big thing to look at.
Well, we're familiar here with budget cuts, unfortunately, but we're going to continue our conversation. But I want to thank you all both. Let's give them a round of applause for this amazing, time that you all spent, and just thank you all for serving our community. And if you're at home watching, we appreciate you for watching another episode of Slice of Community. Our conversation is not done, though. So if you head over to our YouTube and just go to Nashville PBS on YouTube, you can be able to hear the rest of this conversation. We appreciate y'all, and see you next time.
Check.
Hey y'all, thank you all. That was really great. You did a great job, and I'm excited. I hope you have questions. I want to remind you that we have a free screening coming up on January 22nd. It's going to be at the Frist Art Museum. It's a documentary that we have that's going national on PBS called Made in the West. It features 2 Tennessee artists who are artisans, craftsmen, who make functional.
Okay. Yep.
Yes. A few years ago, or the last Republican convention, Nashville was in the running to host it. Our city council, the state wanted it. Metro Nashville did not. They wouldn't support it. And it seemed like there was a series of legislation to punish Nashville. The sports, I don't remember them all, but there was a sports authority. There was something about the airport authority, and I guess the biggest one was to reduce the size of the Metro Council. And Senator Pody, did you support those punitive measures, and how did that episode affect bipartisanship within the delegation, and is there lasting, where do we stand now?
Sure, great question. And there were several. It was the economic board, so there were several that came through. And some I did support, some I did not. In fact, when the vote was coming in the Senate, it was almost always partisan vote on every single bill. But some of them I ended up going to my Senate colleagues, and I asked my delegation that was in Davidson County, I said, this time I don't want anybody from the delegation to say anything. Let me do it. And I came within 2 votes of stopping some of these things. And I think I could have ended up with 2 votes if I could have just had a little more time to work them. So I did support some of them I didn't support when we went through. And we did come close in the Senate to stopping. It was, all the other ones voted overwhelmingly. However, it did kind of share that the caucus as well as the delegation, that we do have some strength that we were going forward to say it wasn't right what we were doing, and we almost did stop some of them.
I'll say the punitive politics of that moment was not the finest of the legislature, and we're still dealing with those after effects. I mean, several of those things are still going through the court. Right now, the airport, I think, was, just to joke with people at the time, I ran for legislature for a lot of things. Protecting the airport, which isn't even in my district, was not one of them. I spent probably, more time on that airport bill than any other bill that entire year. Because it really has a huge economic impact, and just the horrible things that former FAA leaders that were, Republican, officials in the first Trump administration, who was from Nashville, was saying like, hey, we might put our whole airport at risk. That is billions of dollars of economic impact for no reason other than just politics, petty politics at that. And so, unfortunately, we're still dealing with that today. Hopefully, we'll come out on the right side of those and all the lawsuits, the ones that are still standing, and hopefully we don't have to go through those episodes again.
All right, thank y'all.
My question is kind of in that same arena. Nashville voters, Davidson County voters overwhelmingly voted to create a community oversight board. I'd like to think that the Davidson County delegation supported what Davidson County voters had voted for, but can you speak to why it was taken away from us in spite of what we had voted for?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So absolutely, and there were several community oversight boards throughout the state, and we, instead of having each one individually, we combined all of them. And if I had to pick a model, it modeled after the Knoxville Oversight Board. So we got it consistent across the state. So Shelby County, Knox County, all of them didn't have individuals. They all did a lot more the same. Part of the reason is this: some of them did not have as professional training or people in there. And there were some people that were on the oversight boards that were literally going in and destroying crime scenes. And that's not right, because when they would be closed off, they thought that they had the right to go past the police lines to do things, and they were contaminating crime scenes, and we can't have that. So we thought we needed to have one standard across the state, and that's what we did. So there still is the oversight board, but it's going to be, well, the police oversight board, I believe, is still in fact, and that's what it was, the model across the whole state.
It's a different entity than it was.
It is a different, yes.
Yes, so it's
Yeah.
not what we voted for.
Okay.
I would just say the preemption fights or state preemption fights are some of the kind of the worst things I think we see a lot when, particularly, I get a lot of feedback from my constituents. You have a blue dot in a very red state, and locally they want certain things, and the state will has the authority to punt those and overreach on those, and so you see it quite often on many issues, and unfortunately it's just it's part of being a blue dot in a red state, unfortunately.
I just want to say thanks for bringing up the tunnel. And my only question is, with private funded projects, is this going to be the process, or are they going to include the community in the next privately funded project?
Yeah,
That's my question.
I would say I sure hope not. I mean, one of the things that have been kind of, I sure hope this is not the model is what I meant, because what we did a couple years ago when we were doing the choice lanes, which are the toll lanes, is we put forth a process when private investment comes in for roads. This is how it gets funded and legal and everything else. Well, this is, in my mind, this is very similar to the big, huge, large private investment for transportation. Well, we threw that whole process out the road, and the governor unilaterally said, you get state right-of-way without a bid, without public hearings, public inputs, and kind of created an own process. So when I mentioned about that earlier, I mean, that's unfortunately in a number of ways, and I hope is not the model that we do for any public asset moving forward.
Do you want to talk to that as well?
Sure. So we did do the choice lane as well. I'm going to tell you that roads should be a state business. That is our role, is to provide the infrastructure. And I like the fact that we need to stay on that is state. And I'm not thrilled with any kind of, even the choice lanes where we're doing it with private money and private people doing it. I would rather have that as a state road. And I would rather have us fund the necessary money to make sure we have good infrastructure. That means we have to do probably at least $1 billion per year of reoccurring money going directly to TDOT for us to even stay current and get caught up with some of the projects we have right now. We propose some bills to do that so we don't have to look at the private money. They just haven't passed at this point. It's who's making the priorities within the budget.
I have a lot of more questions, but if there's questions that you all have, please.
I'm sure both of you all, can you tell the audience what the longevity means?
It could be a couple different ways. As a former state employee, I remember when I got my longevity payment, or it was basically based on years of service, you would get a bonus. And that before my elected office, I know that they moved kind of the performance-based incentives around where it's a different structure.
Okay, so the main problem is normally if you're a state employee and if you have 30 years of service, you get $100 for each year of service. So say for instance, on my anniversary, if I have 30 years, I get $3,000. And that will continue as long as you're a state employee. But I believe in 2015, when the new employees would come in, they wouldn't receive a longevity. And I believe the longevity, when you have your first 3 years of service, then you would get $300, $100 for each year of service, which would be $300. So the new employees that are coming in, they are not receiving any funds for the last 11 years. So I believe we do have a bill out there to support a change in the longevity, because we want the new people to also receive a longevity, and not the employees that were previously there, from 30 years ago. So what's your thoughts on trying to approve that bill?
So when some of this happened, and at that point, as we were walking through what it was going to be looking like for retirement programs for employees, and we knew that the retirement plan that we had was not going to continue to be functional. So they had to change retirement. They had to change a lot of things on how our state employees operated. We've got about 42,000 state employees, and they're great. We couldn't run this state without them. We did try to raise some of the income throughout the last few years to get them up to even a standard of what they could do in the private sector. So we've been working on that. Going back to longevity, I'm not opposed to that. I think that we need to have our employees that they give their lives to the state, and they could work in private sector, they could do other things, but we deserve to make sure, we want to make sure that they get what they deserve.
I'm happy to work with you and the State Employees Association to look at that and making sure, we're paying at a competitive rate. And I know that's one of the issues we've had historically with our state employees is they haven't been paid market rate, particularly in the issues we have with so much cost of living and affordability items here in Davidson County specifically. But as I mentioned before, we're also going to have a really, really challenging budget year. So I think it's going to have to be fit in with the other priorities for raises, cost of living, et cetera. So it's really, need to see how that all, what the numbers attached to it and then how that shakes up with the TSEA employees' priorities as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Yes, I'd like to ask about, with the vouchers, the education vouchers, why, as a senior citizen without any children in the house, I don't mind paying for public education, but I do have real question about public education dollars being able to go to private businesses running schools. And I've heard a lot of comments that, oh, it's not taking any money from the public schools, and yet my understanding is the public school funding is based on the number of students in attendance. Therefore, if you take one student out of the school, you've cut the budget. And it also bothers me, I'm concerned that the amount of the voucher is basically the amount per student, which would be extremely unfair because when you take one student out of a building, it doesn't make the building cost go down. It doesn't mean you have less janitors or anyone. How do you reconcile that information?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. That's a great question, okay? And that's going to be back up this year of what it's going to look like. We have not had any data to know. It just went into effect in August. We don't know how that's actually working. I will tell you, at least from my perspective, when it came in last January, we did it in a special session. I didn't think that was the right way to do it. I don't think there was enough debate that actually sat through. It was, I don't want to say rushed through, but it seemed that way. I would have rather had it funded a different way than out of the general fund. And we actually proposed some things to say it would come out of some of the, for example, new funds that we get from online gambling, things like that, and whatever money's in there, that's not going to the general fund. And I said we should let that go, whatever number, if we're going to say it's not coming from the general fund, it needed to come from a different fund. However, it's a very, very small percentage. We're talking about 20,000 out of almost 1 million students. There are some students, and public school is the absolute best route for almost all students in Tennessee. But it doesn't mean it's the only route. And I think that when we were looking at that, I want to try and find opportunities that if they want to be homeschooled, if they want to go to private school, if they want to go to public school, whatever their option is for that child to work with them, if they want to do an online school. I want to try and find a way that that parent can meet what's best for their child in that situation. We've done some of these things in the past where it was example of special needs. And we give parents with special needs children the right to get this voucher money. And it costs the state a whole lot more money than what we pay them. So every time a special needs child would take that voucher, it saves that school system an immense amount of money because they're no longer having to have a one-on-one teacher. They're no longer having to have that. So on that voucher program, it worked extremely well. Now, when I did hear you mention that if a child leaves that school system, as an example, every single school system in Tennessee is held harmless, and they're going to continue to get the same amount of money, whether that child is in that school or not. So if there was a school system that lost enrollment for any reason, not only just the voucher, but for any reason, their funding did not go down.
And this is going to be the last question, and I'm going to let you finish it off.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Again, I want to raise platform, so I guess I'll have to make this my soapbox. I've been on one about these vouchers for the last year. I unfortunately think this will be the probably the worst public policy decision Tennessee has made in decades, and that's saying something. I urge you to look at the recent comptroller put out a report yesterday on the initial voucher program that happened in just a few counties, and what it came up with was already pretty troubling. 75% of all the students weren't coming from these poor, failing public schools. They're basically, you're just funding existing private school students. They were there anyway. In fact, I think 65% of the students were coming from schools rated A, B, or C. And we've seen what has happened in these other states. Look at Arizona. It's put almost $1 billion hole in their budget. I mean, these vouchers are essentially just a tapeworm for state budgets. And then lastly, I'll say, that's one of the main reasons I've been really against them. It's not, kind of a apathy or anything for not being for school choice. I'm very proudly public school advocate, but just look at what it's done to these other states. I mean, Florida was it's one of the largest voucher states and one of the first, and they just put out their audit a few weeks ago, and they lost like 30,000 students' data. They don't even know how to report on them, what's happening. It's put huge holes in their budgets. There's public schools closing in mass. I'm not talking about outcomes and better things. That's the last thing I'll mention on our comptroller's audit that came out last week was, the public school students were performing better than even the voucher students on the TCAP testing. So I'm seeing a huge cost, a huge sucking sound coming out of our local schools' budgets, and I'm not seeing what we're really getting for it other than just giving a coupon to families that are already going to public school or private school. Excuse me.
Senator Pody, Representative Hemmer, I appreciate y'all once again. Let's give it up for them. And I'm sure they'd be a thrill to take all your other questions you have tonight. Just not here. But thank you all. And take the pizza. Come to the next show, January 29th. Support your local Nashville PBS station. Please donate. Become a member. And thank y'all again. Appreciate it.